Hey there, I'm Travis Patterson, and welcome to Drive and Change. Here, you'll find unfiltered insights and hard-hitting questions that challenge the status quo in law and in life. As a personal injury attorney in Fort Worth, Texas, I've seen firsthand how challenges like distracted driving and family safety issues impact our community, but I refuse to accept these problems as inevitable. In this podcast, we'll dig deep into real-world problems, bringing you practical solutions from my experiences in law, and in parenting, and in entrepreneurship. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to start conversations that make you think differently and provide actionable advice that you can use right away. Welcome to Driving Change. Let's get to it. All right, welcome to another episode of the Driving Change podcast. I'm super excited today to have an old friend of mine, one of my first mentors, actually. I don't know if I've ever called you a mentor or not, but here he is, Vinny Cercelli, ladies and gentlemen. Vinny, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Travis, thanks for having me, man. Great to see you again. Good hearing that I was a mentor. I think we're more of colleagues. And
yeah, maybe.
Surpassed me in your successful practice and all your endeavors. So it's great to be here. I really appreciate it.
I don't know about that, but yeah. So Vinny, by way of introduction, Vinny is a lawyer here in town in Fort Worth. He's a partner at Dugas and Cercelli.
Correct.
When did that firm get started?
We merged our two firms about 3 years ago.
Oh, so that was a merger of Cercelli.
Yep,
okay,
exactly.
Got it. Grew up in Aledo, Texas. Were you one of the state champions?
I was part of the first state championship team that Aledo got back in 1998. So it was a different world back. Aledo football was, you just signed up for it. I was able to just walk.
Everybody played and you won the state championship.
Yeah, we won the state championship. Yeah, that's correct.
You could have worn like your letter jacket or something.
I still have it. I still have the letter jacket. My wife wears it sometimes. Homecoming games.
Okay, well, that's great. Vinny went to TCU undergrad, SMU Law School, now practices commercial litigation, doesn't just do football helmet stuff. We're obviously going to talk about that today, but does have emphasis on federal civil trials. For people who aren't lawyers, that's the stuff that the fancy smart lawyers work on, is the federal court stuff. I spend most of my time over in state court, as you know. Vinny's actually represented me before. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It was a class action actually in federal court. We had a good outcome.
Yeah, we had a little class. Yeah. There was a guy out there. He made a fake law firm had our names and faces on there and was pretending to be us and stealing clients. And Vinny shut that down for us. But anyway, I digress, which I might do a lot today, Vinny. But the reason Vinny is here today is because Vinny was also a lawyer for the largest group of former NCAA football players suing the NCAA in a federal multi-district litigation lawsuit, which is still pending.
Yeah, that one is still pending in Chicago.
Okay. Have you sued anyone else besides the NCAA?
Yes, we've also sued the helmet manufacturer Riddell, biggest helmet manufacturer in the world, football helmets, biggest market share. We had a very large federal, it wasn't an MDL, but it was a federal case with Riddell. We ended up settling the case for our players. It was over 100 guys. That one was more focused on former high school football players who wore Riddell in a certain time period. And it was really, the case was about, did Riddell have a negligent design of their helmets that could have done more to prevent the head injuries the traumatic brain injuries that our clients were suffering from?
Yeah, so let's stop there. So when you have a products case, if you can show that there was some other design that was available that they could have done and they went with a lesser design, was that part of your products case?
Those were the allegations. Yeah, those were the allegations in that case, that there was alternative designs that were out there. And it was interesting, and I do think, we were adverse, obviously, in that case, but Riddell has really, I think, improved the design of the helmets. And you'll see when you're watching games now, if you're watching a college game, you'll see the helmets look different.
Right.
From player to player even. You'll see some helmets that you'll see kind of have almost like it looks like a flap on top. It's not the cap that people are wearing now too, but has a flap on top that's supposed to help redirect some of the energy away from the brain.
So is that like I have little kids who ride bikes, and all the mountain bikes now and like ski, the mountain bike helmets and like even the ski helmets, they all have like MIPS protection. Are you familiar with the MIPS technology?
Yes, I have seen that. Yeah.
Is that what they're putting in football helmets now?
It's a little different in that the ski helmets would be more similar, but the football helmet has to be designed in a way that can take more than one hit. And you'll see, you may see a warning sign on your bike helmet that says, one crash, you need to throw this away.
Right.
Because it's going to take the impact it's going to, parts of the helmet are going to actually break and no longer be usable.
Yes.
So the football helmet has to be used again, and just by nature of the game, you can't throw your football helmet away every hit. And in fact, some certain positions like offensive linemen, defensive linemen, they're having multiple impacts every play.
Right.
I mean, they're crashing into the line, crashing into each other over and over again. So that's sort of what, the helmet designs have really focused on and gone towards. And if I can put a little bit of a pitch in for why it's important, why are lawyers important, why are lawsuits important? A lot of people say, oh, too many lawsuits, too many of these things.
Right.
But litigation really helps regulate large industries better than a federal regulation or a state regulation. If you can have cases that push companies to change designs, to do different things, and I think we're seeing that, not just in, the helmet, but also in like the NCAA cases and the NFL lawsuits about concussions. They made changes, those organizations made changes that I think were the result of litigation.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to stop, I think they had a true interest in stopping injuries, but they also had kind of a fire lit to, we need to make these changes so that we can show we're doing something.
I mean, yeah, in a lawsuit, we get to take discovery for years, typically depositions, get the documents, find out where everything is hidden, and lawmakers don't always have the chance to do that. And I'm sure you got some interesting discovery in those cases. Yeah,
we saw, and I can share the things that have been public, but in the NCAA cases in particular, there were, the NCAA did do studies going back in the 60s, 70s, 80s about what's going on with these players, what are the rules, how can we do things to protect these head injuries, and our allegations are nothing was done for a long time.
Right.
And just, going back, even just focusing back on the NCAA, that's the voluntary governing body of college sports. So all the colleges that have sports programs, they, almost all of them, go through the NCAA for their regulations.
Right.
And the NCAA sets the rules. The players have to sign a contract that says they're going to follow the rules, and it has been that way since the NCAA was formed. And really one thing that I learned as we started getting into these cases with the NCAA, they were actually formed over 100 years ago. Teddy Roosevelt was president. He loved football. He was a football player.
Like literally like 1900s, early 1900s.
1914 or something like that, yeah. Over 100 years ago. And there was a rash of players who were dying on the field.
Right.
These were the old, either no helmets or leather helmet days. And Teddy Roosevelt, called all the university presidents together who had football programs and said, I love football. I want it to keep going. There's going to be an outcry about this. We have people dying on the field. What can we do?
Right.
So really the NCAA was founded with the purpose of protecting football players, but not just, any injury. It was really focused on head injuries. And so they tried to, they implemented rules about leading with the head and what you could do back then. And they've made changes over time. But I think, a lot of people have seen big changes in the last 10 years in the wake of this concussion litigation.
Yeah.
Not just ours, but in the NFL. And so that's why you'll see, rule changes where the kickoffs look different, where there's,
And we'll talk about what's going on today, but I don't think anyone listening to this podcast is going to be like, oh, Vinny and Travis just taught me for the first time that football is dangerous and that my kid might get a concussion. It seems like now it's pretty ubiquitous. People understand that. Yeah. And so one of the things I want to do today is just kind of truly educate parents on what the risks exactly are and the signs and things to look for, and then what we can do as parents to mitigate the risk.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. But yeah, the fact that the NCAA was literally founded to deal with head trauma from the jump, the entire NCAA 100 years ago, it's pretty crazy in the fact that it took so long to kind of really attack this. I understand the counter argument, I guess, is you don't want to completely water down the game. But there's obviously a middle ground, and it seems like we're heading to a more balanced place now than we have been.
And I think as people understand the risks more, as the coaches kind of embrace it a little bit more, as the referees understand it, and something that's happened recently, even at the middle school and high school level in Texas now, there has to be a concussion protocol committee in each district, and that's got to have at least a physician on it. You've got to have non-coaches on the committee, and they come up with a plan of, Here's what we need to do to watch out for these things. Here's the plan if we think someone has suffered even any kind of brain injury. Here's what the rules are going to be before they can come back in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we can definitely talk about those. But there are resources for parents, resources for coaches, resources for, just fans. Because I think we're football fans, we're up playing football. We don't want to see it go away. We want to see it preserved.
Absolutely.
And, there's that question that everybody, I know that we've talked about this before. For our own kids, we have sons. Are we going to let them play tackle football?
Right.
What's the word on that? I grew up playing football, loved it. Met some of my best friends playing football. But I know guys who are now suffering from brain injuries
guys you played with.
Guys that I played with.
Right.
Yeah.
I think we all know football players who are dealing with these problems.
And so, what do you do? Do you let your son play? And if you do, when do you start?
Well, I'm going to make you answer that question at some point today.
Yeah.
But, because I think a lot of parents want to know your thoughts on it, because you've been in the throes of this stuff for what? 7-8 years now?
7 years, yeah. 7 years, yeah.
So you know this stuff a lot better than most. Okay, so let's talk about the dangers, right? So concussion, people hear that word, and I don't know if everybody really understands what a concussion is. But it's not just concussions, right? It's just every hit to the head that's not diagnosed as a concussion still has an impact.
Correct, yeah.
So let's talk about that.
And so concussion is everyone knows the word, but there's a lot of disagreement on what level of injury constitutes a concussion. We used to call it like getting your bell rung,
right.
Just having that
getting
dazed
dizzy
feeling. That, modern neurologists and neuroscientists say that is a concussion. Getting your bell rung is a concussion. I think technically a concussion is any brain injury that stops normal function as a result of the brain rattling or twisting inside the skull.
Even just temporarily.
Even temporarily. You don't have to get blacked out. You don't have to get knocked out. A concussion, most concussions don't result in a blackout.
Right.
It just results in the loss of the normal functioning of some part of your body as a result of that rattling or twisting of the brain. So there's people suffer a lot more concussions than I think they realize. But there is definitely a concussion is a type of traumatic brain injury. So you hear like the TBI is the acronym.
Right.
And there's all kinds of different levels of TBI. But
mild, moderate, severe.
Exactly. Yep. And so, there will be initial symptoms that hit, like you said, dizziness, vomiting, inability to focus, loss of consciousness obviously would be one of them. Loss of certain motor skills just temporarily. You see the guys get up and they're wobbling.
Yeah, look at Tua this year.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Multiple times. And that's we can talk about that. We made all these rule changes, but then you'll still see guys go back in that should not be going back in.
Right.
And people kind of turn a blind eye. Or you'll see an obvious, a receiver gets blasted and it's obviously a targeting, that where a guy's hitting helmet to helmet. And the refs will say, oh, no, it wasn't targeting after all because it's some important playoff game. So that cultural change is still kind of slow to
Was that a shot at the Texas Longhorns, by the way?
Yeah, I'm just saying. I think saw it.
That was very thinly veiled.
It was, Texas. It was a good game. It was an entertaining game, but somehow they waved off the targeting there at the fourth quarter.
No, you're right. The stuff is not always enforced the same across the board.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have concussion protocols. Obviously, we see that now in place in the NFL. I didn't realize that Texas is actually kind of out front on this issue.
Texas
looks like we have been for about 10 or 11.
Yeah, really in 2011, Texas started making changes through the legislature, and they've made changes pretty much every legislative session to tweak, which I really appreciate and like.
And to improve. And
to improve player safety and to improve access. So I would say Texas is at the forefront. We have the most football players in the country, high school football players in the country. And people want to see it preserved. Even, people who like the rough and tumble aspect of the game still want the game to be here for their kids in 5, 10, 20 years, whatever.
Right.
So Texas made legislative changes about what each school district needs to have in place, concussion protocols, physicians, and then if a player does get a concussion, they need to get now a sign off from a neutral third party doctor who says this person can return to play. And they've got to go
not a coach.
Not a coach. And in fact, on the sidelines, there has to be a non-coach who actually makes the decision on a player coming in or out. And I think that helps the coaches because there's a lot of pressure on coaches to put their best kid back in, get them back out there, if you can. So the goal there is take that pressure away from the coaches, put it into a neutral, kind of an advocate for the kids. The other thing I'd say about Texas has a parental bill of rights where parents have rights in any public school, charter school. I don't think it regulates the private schools, but that's a different issue. But in any public school, there's a parental bill of rights, which I'd encourage anybody to go look up. You have the right to intervene for your kid's safety. In a football game, you have the right to override even the coach and tell them the kid needs to come out.
Right.
And they have to honor that. There's a long list of those parental bill of rights, and Texas is also clear that this doesn't limit your rights. It's not the only things you get, but we're going to codify, we're going to put these into a law so anybody can see it, the coaches can see it to protect.
And that's not just if the parents told the kid has a concussion. That's if the parent suspects the kid may have a concussion.
Absolutely, yeah. And so I would give that advice to parents. Don't be afraid to speak up. You're going to be your ultimate, the kid's best advocate in educating him about, or her, because, I've talked about football, but there's concussions in soccer, there's concussions in lacrosse, there's everything. I mean, any sport you can have, volleyball. So you have those rights as a parent, for your kids, boys or girls.
Yeah, and it's a good thing for parents to know. Obviously, I mean, you've got to be willing to be that parent, right? Who comes out of the stands and says, "Take Johnny out." Yeah. I insist. And maybe you just have that conversations with your family beforehand. Like, look, tackle football is a tough decision for our family. Here are the rules our family is going to play this by. If me or your dad or whatever suspect this, we will step up. We will be those parents. And if you can't handle that embarrassment or that ridicule or whatever that backlash might look like from your buddies, then we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And, let the kid buy into that kind of decision and teach them why, right? Yeah. It's for your own safety.
And I promise you I've spoken with hundreds of guys who are suffering from traumatic brain injury now, likely CTE. It's worth the moment of embarrassment to pull your kid out and not have to have them live a life because the symptoms and signs are long-term and it takes a long time to manifest, to show up.
And we talked about this yesterday on our call, that talk about the risks go up if you go back in the game and get that second concussion.
Yeah, exactly. So the first concussion, the first traumatic brain injury, that can be bad. It can be devastating. It can be horrible. It may not be that bad. Maybe the symptoms aren't that bad, but the science has proven that the second hit, the second concussion, your brain, once it's suffered that first brain injury, that first concussion, it's I forget the percentage. It's like 250% more perceptible to an additional injury, and the injury is worse. It's kind of like you've broken an egg. Just the slightest little tap will break the rest of the shell.
Right.
So that second concussion, there's a whole subset of studies about the second concussion syndrome, and that's why it's so important that players, when they have a brain injury in a game, they need to come out for that game and then get checked out by a doctor who will give them the sign off. Don't go back into the game. Don't let your kid go back into the game if you suspect they've suffered a concussion. And that same thing is true for developing brains. Kids' brains are wired and padded differently than adult brains.
Right.
So when you talk about a kid doing youth tackle football, like I said, it's everybody's choice, every parent's choice, and I've heard good and bad arguments on why it's important. But just know the risk is higher for children who are playing in Pop Warner or youth football, even at a smaller size, smaller speed hit. Their brains are more susceptible to long-term traumatic brain injury.
Right. Huge point. Like, even though the impacts might not be as severe, you might not hear it from the stands like you do in the high school games. The brains are developing.
Yeah, and you also got to think it's
a softer eggshell.
Yeah, softer eggshell, but also think about the life of a player. It's not just the football games, it's every practice there's impacts, and every time your risk goes up, the more you're playing and taking hits, the higher your risks are over the course of your career. So for me, in my decision, I want to minimize the length of time and the amount of practices and the amount of games that my kid is going to be experiencing the potential to get those impacts. Yeah. So that's just a decision I made. I think my kids, I have 3 sons, 2 of them play flag football. Obviously there's even risks in that.
Sure.
But they're pushing to get into tackle football, and my personal choice is I'm going to hold them off at least until middle school. Mm-hmm. I've heard arguments on the other side that it's good for young kids to learn how to tackle properly and how to take hits. I think that makes sense at a lower speed, but for me, it's just the risks and the side effects that I've seen from guys who played, even just in high school, are so severe.
Because there's still a ton of skills you can teach them, in elementary school that will translate to middle school or high school football.
Exactly.
Throwing, catching, running, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And I know you're in Aledo, and that's a big, Aledo is a football powerhouse, and they start them young in the program, and they want them.
I think second grade.
Yeah. I know people.
Just kind of wild. It's kind of funny seeing them in their pads. They're bigger than they are. But, I just remember seeing that. I'm like, wow, this seems early. I think when I was a kid, it was fourth grade is when it started. But now it just, everything.
They push them younger and younger for sure. They get them going there, but
the cumulative effect of all of those impacts over the course of that career.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw a study from a couple years ago, just the average college football player. You know how many times he gets hit in the head?
I don't. What are those numbers?
415 times.
Wow.
The average college football player who sees the field.
I believe that.
And it makes sense. It's not just the big tackles and the big sacks. It's like a lineman or defensive lineman. I mean, that's every single play.
Yeah, every single play.
Getting hit in the head just about.
Yeah, multiple times, and you're getting even. Doesn't have to be a head-to-head impact. Even a hand to the face face mask can cause that rattling of the brain.
We're falling down, hitting the ground with the helmet.
Exactly. And so it's multifaceted on what rules they've tried to make to change things up. Texas, in addition to the concussion protocol, there's been regulations and rule changes about head-to-head impacts. There's also been changes to how often they can have practices in full pads.
Yeah.
And how far apart those practices need to be for like 2-a-days and things like that, which I think have helped. And I think the goal there is reduce the number of times you could have those impacts because you just never know which one's going to be the one. And the other problem is, like I said, you might not see the symptoms for 5 years. And then they suddenly, and I heard this story over and over again from our clients, they had played football, they'd gotten out of the game, and then years later they realized, look, I'm having trouble. It starts off, I'm having trouble keeping a job because I can't keep showing up, and I'm having trouble, I'm sleeping in. Then I'm getting depression. Then I'm having these fits of rage with a girlfriend or a wife.
Yeah.
And then they kind of put all those together. They don't know what it is, see a neurologist, and they're saying, okay, look, there's evidence of brain injury here. So it's just, all that to say, there's a lot of guys who are walking around with those symptoms and those issues. Don't feel like if you're one of those types of people, don't feel like all hope is lost. There are ways. They've also improved, in addition to, improving football helmets and things, they've improved treatments.
They've improved the treatments.
Yeah, a lot. And so
I was talking to a football player the other day, actually, who had, he wasn't feeling himself. And he went in and got a brain scan, and they could see it on the map.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, this section, we need to work on this. And they were able to put him through therapies to kind of rewire that part of the brain and improve it. And it's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
And that stuff wasn't available.
No, because they weren't thinking, that this would be something that needs to be treated. They would treat it as if it was an Alzheimer's, like, oh, this is early onset Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
And they've done some, in addition to, therapeutic type things, physical type therapy, where it's brain exercises and speech therapy and things like that, which can really help. There's also, there's medications that they've found have worked, and certain types of Alzheimer's medications do actually work and kind of help stem the tide and put those symptoms off. So there's definitely help out there. If you're in Texas, I would say UT Southwestern in Dallas has a traumatic brain injury program where that's what they focus on, and it's also cutting edge. I mean, it's right up there with Boston University as far as their ability to diagnose brain injuries and then treat it. So
how expensive is that to get in there?
They've got a program that they can, if you'll participate in some of their studies, they'll actually pay for some of the treatment. So they're doing ongoing studies all the time.
Awesome.
You don't have to do it that way, and your insurance will typically, if you have insurance, can cover it.
Yeah.
If you don't, you can participate in programs where you'll be one of the subjects who they're monitoring over a long period of time and seeing what treatments work and what doesn't. So there's a lot of options, but I would definitely, if you feel like you've got those signs or symptoms, talk to your doctor if you got one. If not, go to the UT Southwestern Traumatic Brain Injury group. I can't remember the last name of it, but it's online. It's easy to find, and they'll get you in and talk to you.
Okay. And now going back to the litigation a little bit, it sounds like you're wrapping up kind of this part of your career. I mean, you're not going to do football litigation forever?
No, I'm not. I'm not going to do football litigation forever. And part of that is, I think there was a time frame where you could make a claim like this that the NCAA did not inform me of these risks, or they didn't do enough to protect me from the risks. As you said, in the last 10 years or so, I think it's become more.
There's more education out there now.
Well known and more education, and so there's an issue with like the statute of limitations and things like that, where it's just going to be hard for a player to say they either didn't know or weren't informed, but then waited 10 years to make a claim. So at least for me, that's we're trying to resolve and work out the NCAA cases that are still pending. And if those will either get settled or we'll start having some trials. There's been a handful of trials of actual cases going to trial. One of them was a former UT football player. His name was Pletz, and he, they got all the way through the expert witnesses testifying, but then the NCAA settled it right then and there.
Okay.
And then there's been another case. I forget this one. This was maybe 2 years ago, where the NCAA won the case, saying no, it wasn't our duty and responsibility. So it's gonna be interesting to see how the trials play out. If
these cases are tried individually.
They're tried individually, yeah. So that's in an MDL. That's a multi-district litigation. They'll bring in all the cases together for all the pretrial stuff,
right?
And then I know you know this, and then they'll send each case back individually to get tried once it's time to do so. So that's kind of where we're at. We've gotten through all the discovery and all the pre-trial motions and things like that.
So of the guys that you've represented, or just the kind of the guys you know about, I mean, you talked about at the low end of the spectrum, I'm having trouble. I'm fatigued.
Yeah, focusing.
I'm having trouble focus. Something's not right with me anymore. Now, that escalation, you kind of talked about some of it, but like how high does it go? I mean, have you had guys who have died?
Yes, we've had guys who have died who have, after, unfortunately, they still can't diagnose CTE, which is that is the kind of the highest level. That's that chronic, we've got this brain injury that's not going to get better. You can't diagnose it in living patients. They still have to take the brain and look at it. And so unfortunately, we've had guys who have, committed suicide, and then we've had their brains examined, and they've got CTE. So that's, CTE death cases. There's also on that high end is, Alzheimer's and Lou Gehrig's disease. And that kind of just the thing that it's a young person who seems like if it's somebody who's 90 years old, like with Alzheimer's, like can't remember anything, can barely speak. Seen a lot kind of on the middle range. It's speech problems, can't form words, can't form sentences.
Wow.
Then depression is again on that. Depression's very serious because it can lead to suicide, but depression's a very common side effect that we're seeing with these cases and players. And we got, the range is, like you said, from the lower end to the worst possible outcome. But
so, I mean, this is important for people to understand. Education is improved, but have the outcomes improved, like with that kind of stuff? I mean, we're never going to take the risk completely out of the game of football. And so talk about the improvements in the helmets, whether that's Guardian caps or the helmet itself, and then whether or not we are seeing that that's actually reducing these cases. Because like you said, we don't see the results of stuff like this until like 5 years down the road.
Well, at least from big picture, what the NCAA has started doing is actually reporting the incidence of head injuries in each season. And with the rule changes, they have seen a decrease in reported head injuries. I haven't, we'll have to look big picture whether the long-term impact of lifelong traumatic brain injuries goes down. I hope it will, and I hope that the changes are going to result in that. So that's just on the rule change front. On the helmet front, again, no helmet will totally eliminate the risk of concussions. And there was actually some litigation a few years back when concussions were first kind of coming to the forefront of everybody's attention, like with the NFL settlement and things like that. Rydell had a helmet that they put out that they claimed reduced concussions by, and I can't remember the percentage, but it was over 50%. Like we got this over 50% reduction in concussions. This is a great new helmet. And the federal government actually had to come out and say, after Rydell got sued, you can't advertise. That's false advertising. You can't do that. Riddell based that on a study at the University of Pittsburgh that Riddell paid for and actually had, employees do the study along with some other people. So be careful when you see anybody claiming that this helmet will reduce concussions by some percentage, or this is the safest, newest helmet that, you're not gonna have to worry about that. The risk will always be there, but there are helmets that through, testing and studies show they move the impact away from coming into the brain. It's supposed to go towards the back of the helmet and then kind of down towards the back rubber guard. So interesting. It's kind of the mechanics of it we talked about before is think of like an old car from the 1970s. The goal was we're going to make this thing the heaviest, toughest, strongest thing that'll drive through a brick wall. Right. Well, that's not actually a good design for a car because the impact ends up going into the soft tissue in the body.
Right. You get absorbed in the spine of your driver.
So they made changes where vehicles now take impact. It may result in the bumper crumpling or, taking the impact and moving it away from the person. And that's sort of the goal with the new helmet designs. Flexibility in the helmet, flex on that top cap.
So we can't say for sure that they're safer. It just seems that they are because that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
where we're at.
That's where the technology is right now. And there's an organization, it's called NOCSAE. It's NOCSAE. On the back of every football helmet packaging in America, you'll get a NOCSAE rating on how much in G-force is it able to displace. And so if you're out looking for a helmet, and I should bring this point up too, you have the right as a parent to get your kid whatever helmet you want as long as it meets the minimum safety standards, and that's like NCAA approved, which even though it's high school, and if the NCAA says this helmet meets our minimum requirements, you can use it in high school in Texas. Even if the team has a different helmet and they say these are our issued helmets, you have the right as a parent to buy your own helmet. There's a way to get a stipend for the value of the helmet that the school is providing.
So the Cougars team issued high school helmet. Everybody gets a helmet. And what's like a basic helmet cost? Like $100, $200?
$200 is about a basic kind of
$200. So Johnny brings home his helmet, and you as a parent say, I want to see if there's a nicer helmet out there.
Yeah.
You go look it up, and as long as it's NCAA approved, you can go buy that helmet, turn in the old helmet, and get a stipend. So you get a check for $200, I guess, in that scenario.
Correct. And then the school will, I can't remember whether the school pays to repaint it or you do, but you'll get it matching the school colors and all that kind of stuff. But that's a right you have, and I think you should do that. Look at what helmet gets issued. Yeah. There's rules about, now, just so you know, one of the rule changes 10 years ago that Texas made was helmets can't be more than 16 years old. So that just goes to show you these are helmets that they'd been using for at least 16 years.
Oh, wow.
And they were just repainting and repurposing. Now it's 10 years old, and they've got to resurface them and rework them. I think every 2 years, but you may not be getting the highest quality helmet that's the school issued, helmet. So take a look, and then you can look online. Academy actually has a pretty good selection of football helmets at the beginning of the football season. Look at those NOCSAE ratings, do some research on what helmets are the best. Riddell has a helmet that's supposed to be pretty good, according to NOCSAE now, that came out, I think 2 years ago. It's like a Flex 2 or something like that. But there's other brands too. There's now competition, which I think is partially the result of litigation and people knowing more about it. New companies have come out, or companies that didn't used to make football helmets have come out with kind of interesting designs on ways to help the player safety and improve those things. So take a look at those things.
So when the Cercelli boys play football, I assume you're going to take that stipend and go get the best helmet you can.
Definitely. Now, hopefully the helmets will keep on improving. If I was going to go buy one today, there's a Zenith helmet that, based on the studies, that they did a lot of work on, not just the outer shell, but the inner shell, like the soft part on the inside. Uh-huh. They did things that, again, move the impact away, and it's supposed to be a better foam to kind of absorb that. It's supposed to be more like soft tissue that's going to be the first to absorb the impact before your brain does.
It's interesting that I understand that concept, but like when a car gets smashed, the bumper caves in, like that's a good thing, like we talked about, so it doesn't transfer that energy to the occupants. But you got to go take the bumper back to the shop and get it fixed.
Exactly.
So what happens when those helmets get hit? They just kind of reform and take their.
Supposedly, it's supposed to, like on that Riddell Flex, That's probably the most popular helmet right now in college that you'll see. On the crown of the helmet, it will move up and down. Like it'll take the impact and like move down, but then go back to its original shape. That's the problem though. You're right. You can't go back and replace the bumper. You can't replace the helmet in the middle of the game. Some of those Zenith helmets have the foam padding inside. You can replace that really quickly. And so like if you get a bad impact and there's damage to it,
that's interesting.
You can take out that inner shell and switch it out, which is interesting. It's time consuming and it's a more expensive helmet. But I mean, they're ranging anywhere from $200 to $800 from what I've seen.
Oh, $800. Wow.
Yeah, $800 for kind of the top end. And, but do your research, and literally every season they're coming out with new helmets. Each of these companies is.
Yeah. And this stuff should get cheaper and cheaper.
Hopefully.
Just like any other technology. Yeah. And you could see a world in the future where in the concussion protocol that they swap out the interior of the helmets maybe.
Yeah, exactly. I think that would. And I think with, it's kind of a guinea pig system right now where you're testing out what is the best helmet. I think the best helmets will kind of emerge and will become more commonplace in what people like to use and what they can use. So yeah, it's interesting to see. It's kind of fascinating to see how fast the technology is changing on the helmets though.
Yeah.
And the alternative designs that they look at. I know you mentioned Guardian caps, and that's the outer, you can put that on any helmet, but it's an outer shell that you actually physically put on. Those originally came out in like the 1970s.
Right.
And the helmet makers and the NFL actually banned them. So no, we're not going to do that. You can't do this, with pressure. So I think the jury's still out on the Guardian caps. I haven't seen a lot of great studies showing that those.
I talked to the Guardian cap guy this morning.
Did you really? Well, what's his word?
They love them.
Well, shocking.
No, it was a sales guy because I called him and I'm like, hey, if we're thinking about sponsoring a team and getting them all Guardian caps, but I was like, I need to see the science first. I need to know that they help.
Yeah,
I'm not going to just do it just to do it, right? And so you're saying you haven't seen convincing science on it?
I have not, and maybe he's got some new study that hopefully Guardian Cap Inc. didn't pay for, and it's an actually independent, neutral study. But I don't know. I mean, I just haven't. The studies that I did see from 2 years ago, I didn't see a big improvement on that G-force rating. So
right,
because I think the problem. I mean, I'm no scientist.
I mean, the NFL is now allowing them.
They allow them. Yeah, it's your choice. If you want to wear them, you can. But I've seen a few guys wear them.
Your suspicion is that that's just the NFL saying like.
Yeah.
Like if you want to do it, fine.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you what to do.
I think there has been a shift a little bit on the liability front where it's like, we'll let you do whatever you want, but it's on you, which is partially why now, like in Texas, they make you go to your doctor and get a sign off from your doctor who says you're allowed to come back and play. Like we're not going to be the ones to say when you're allowed to come back in.
Call.
Yeah. You make the decision and we'll abide by it. And then a part of that form actually
is fine.
Yeah, that makes sense. But there's a waiver on that form that says, you hereby, release all liability, and you understand that under the education code, you can't sue us once you submit this. So that's, it's sort of a two-edged sword, but at least it's something, and you will get a true neutral, hopefully a neutral doctor who can make the right decision.
Yeah.
But that's just kind of going back to what we were talking about, be an advocate for your kids. If you're a doctor, be an advocate for the player. Obviously the sport comes second to long-term health, and don't get too wrapped up in it. And coaches too. I think coaching attitude has improved. But if you're a coach or if you're an assistant coach, be on the lookout for any signs and symptoms and help the kids out. I know the coaches have, good intentions, but don't let the thrill of the game override that role as a guardian for the players.
Yeah. I mean, especially like coaches who have to recruit, like just to be able to go into people's living rooms and say like, look, I'm going to take care of your kid the best of my ability.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put them in if I suspect that not just concussions, but just taking a beating to the head.
Yeah. And I think as parents, you should, if you got a kid who's, who's going to be recruited and talked to, that should be something that you talk to the coach about. What is the concussion protocol at your school? Who is on your staff? Who's going to be on the sideline? Do you have a dedicated, trainer who's doing this, or is it a physician? Yeah.
Do y'all comply with just the minimum standards, or have y'all gone above and beyond?
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's small school districts that can be difficult because, they've got to come up with ways to come up with a concussion committee who meets all the state law requirements, but who's also going to be dedicated to just watching on the sidelines. They've got to have a dedicated person who's looking for those symptoms. So it can be a parent. Like if you're a parent who's interested in doing that, talk to it's the superintendent who sets that committee. Talk to your superintendent and ask who's on the committee, who's on the sideline. Do you want to volunteer as a parent, overseer, helping out with those things? Because I think that would be helpful.
Does it have to be a physician?
The physician does not. So a physician has to be on the council,
right?
But it doesn't have to be a physician on the sideline.
Got it.
So it's kind of, and that's evolving, but that's just, I think, the reality of, are these schools going
to? It has to be a neutral parent. It can't be the star quarterback.
Put them back in, yeah. Put them back in, yeah. Exactly.
Okay, kickoffs. I want to talk about football today.
Okay.
We talked about the changes we made. We've got better helmets, we think.
Yep.
Some guys wear guarding caps. We're not sure if that's helping or not. We see targeting called most times, unless it's the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, that's right.
We see kickoffs look completely different.
Yeah,
because that's obviously an area where some of the biggest impacts used to be.
Yeah, sprinting down the field 80 yards and waiting for some guy who's standing there still. I think the plan was if we can reduce the amount of distance that they're traveling, and then also incentivize the kickers to, because they move the ball up a little bit, so the kicker, it's easier to kick it
almost
out
always a touchback.
Yeah, and you can now, I think, a fair catch anywhere within, I think behind the 25, you can still get it at the 25.
Yep.
And I think there's been a few others, and those were not popular rule changes. People were mad about those.
Right.
But according to the NFL, they did a study too on way less injuries, not even just brain injuries, but far less injuries from kickoffs as a result of those rule changes.
Because they didn't just start; they tested that somewhere.
Yeah,
it may have been Canadian football or XFL or something.
Or the whatever the AFL thing was that they had for a while.
They tested that somewhere else, and then it was working, so they brought it. Great.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like it's working great.
Yeah, and I think they've also tried to, the rules about blows to the head, especially the quarterbacks. I think they should make that for all the players, where even hitting on the head or any kind of targeting, obviously, but I think protecting players' heads has got to be the key as far as any kind of impact. A knee to the head can cause a concussion. So I'd like to see more of those types of rules where, players are learning to avoid hitting certain areas. They can learn that. And the same with tackling. I've heard that they've really changed, a form tackle has changed the way they coach that. It used to be, put your head down, put your head into middle of the guy's chest and do those things, but that causes such impact on the head. So guys are tackling with their shoulders, which, used to be, oh, that's a shoulder tackle, that's no good. But even at the younger age, so if you got a kid with, if you got a younger kid who's just getting into football, watch and see and talk to the coach about what is his form tackle, like what's his method for teaching form tackle, because that has changed. And it's supposed to be changing all the way up, high school and college and the NFL. To comply with the rules, they need to make that change. But we all learned it a different way. So just make sure you got some dad out there coaching. Like, I'm sure you coach kids sports.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not always most up to speed on proper tackling techniques.
That's good advice, Vinny. So we've talked about advice for parents. Yeah. Helmet selection, right to intervene, tackling, ask questions about concussion protocols, and then think about when to start, obviously, tackle football.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for coaches, look at not just high school coaches, 'cause I know they'll be looking at the rules, but if you're coaching at a younger age, there's all kinds of good information on the UIL website, which is that they govern Texas high school football, but they've got really good form tackle guidelines, and they've got model concussion protocols that you can follow, that you can download. There's videos on there about the risks of concussions that you can give to the parents. I would encourage doing all those things at the beginning of the football season. Send those things out to your parents, let them see, let them talk to their kids about it, because knowing the signs of a concussion, a lot of times only the player knows when he's, suffering some symptom, and he may just think it's part of the game, but learning about dizziness, loss of focus, losing ability to stand straight, tingling in weird places after you've, suffered a head injury. Very important for the kids to know, so that way they can
report it.
Yeah, they can report it and to not be afraid to report it.
Yeah, embolden them to report that.
Yeah, exactly.
To protect their long-term health.
So that's been one good kind of side effect of everyone learning more about concussions. There are good resources that are out there. What
about for the parents who their kids are done playing football and they're starting to have these symptoms and they're getting concerned?
Yeah, I would go to your primary care doctor if you have one, and that way you can kind of document it and he can get you a referral. It's much faster to get into a neuro. If you need to go see a neurologist, my experience has been it's so much faster if you can get a referral from a treating physician who's the family doctor. And I know, like, for example, I know the doctor in Aledo, Dr. Kretschmar, he knows the signs and symptoms, and he's sent people to neurologists. And so it's getting to be, these doctors know more and more about what to look for. But if you're seeing those signs and symptoms, go to your primary care physician or go to an urgent care place if you don't have a normal doctor. That would be my first step. There's also things you can do yourself if you got downtime and you're not sure. There's things called executive functioning tests, and that's nobody likes taking tests, but it's just a simple, you fill out, it's free, it's online, you fill out certain bubbles about how you make decisions, and then it'll give you a score. And that's usually been one of the first, when we're screening clients, we'll have them take an executive functioning test, because executive functioning is decision making, making quick decisions, how you come to a decision, how you form different ideas. A loss of executive functioning is really an early sign of long-term traumatic brain injury, because it gets worse from there. And and that's one of the reasons we see guys who can't keep a job or can't, don't understand why they have such bad impulse control. It's usually a loss of executive functioning. So you can take an executive functioning test online, see what the score is, and it'll tell you, here's what mid-range is, here's what normal is, here's what low end is. And if you've got that, you can, again, take that to a doctor or to a neurologist. But talking about it is key. And depression and domestic violence are two of the most common things that we see. If you see just rage and anger problems directed at a loved one, spouse, girlfriend, that can be a sign of a long-term issue that you can get treated. And it's not, the sooner you get in, the better. Because as you said, you've got guys who who you can do speech therapy, physical therapy that actually do help with the symptoms. And then if they need to escalate it up from there to medicines, there's that option too. But
the sooner the better.
Yeah. And, what I've seen, just because we represented guys, and I'm sure women deal with this too, but the guys are hesitant to talk about depression. They're hesitant to talk about anger issues. So, if you got a loved one who's shown those signs, just talk to them. And if you're a person who's suffering it, talk to somebody, because that's the first step to getting help, rather than just letting it fester and get worse and worse.
Yeah. Great advice. When I was researching for today, I was kind of looking back at some of the stories from this past football season. It seems like every year, I mean, I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like every football season, by the time it ends, there's a handful of players around the country who die.
Yeah.
Not just from like long-term issues like you're talking about, but either on the field or shortly thereafter from these head injuries.
Yeah.
That's just a sad reality of the game, the sport, of a lot of different sports. I mean, that's probably something that we're never going to be able to completely eliminate, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's always going to be a risk, especially in football, because of the amount of padding everybody's wearing and the speed, and players are getting bigger and stronger. So I think I mentioned, when I was younger, high school football was you just sign up and you're on the team. I've watched some of these state championship games, and they look like, they look like college players out there. They're fast and strong and big. The game has sped up, and I do think there's always going to be the risk of, a catastrophic brain injury, that's just death. I mean, that's death either at the time of impact or shortly thereafter. Brain bleeds happen, aneurysms happen, and so there's always, unfortunately, and that's set aside like broken necks and things like that also happen in football. It's sad, but it's going to happen. Heat related deaths. So football is a very risky sport. Finding ways to reduce the risk are great, but you'll never totally eliminate it. So that's just what we all got to wrestle with on, deciding the
life as a parent.
Yeah, exactly. Life as a parent.
Do we ride bikes? Do we go swimming? Do we go skiing? Do we play football? I mean, it's just, these are individual choices, but our job is just to get out the information that we've learned and educate and empower people to make informed decisions.
Yep.
It's not always up to your children, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they don't always get to decide.
Because there is some pressure from the kids. Like, obviously, I mean, it starts pretty early. By the time they get to third or fourth grade, it's like, I want to play tackle football.
Yeah, exactly. And their friends are all playing tackle, and it's football is such a important part of all of our entertainment lives. We're watching football, watching college playoffs, watching NFL games. Maybe not the Cowboys this year so much, but watching and it just gets ingrained. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Interstellar.
No.
It's got Matthew McConaughey in it, and there's a scene where he's like looking through time at his kid.
I do love Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, well, another UT guy. He's looking through. He's like yelling at his kid, trying to keep. He's gone back in time, and he's trying to say, "No, don't do what you're about to do." But I saw a meme where it was like a guy like that trying to yell at his kid not to become obsessed with whatever NFL team you're obsessed with, because that's what his future is going to be, watching the Cowboys do terrible for the next 30 years or whatever it is. So that's just football is such a part of American life, Texas life. And yeah, the kids have a lot of pressure to play and to start playing tackle.
You know what my advice is? Play lacrosse.
Okay.
First, then you can look at football.
Yeah, not everybody's a fancy private school guy like yourself.
Lacrosse is available for anybody who wants to play.
I'm sure. That does look like a cool sport. I've never played lacrosse.
It's great. Hand-eye coordination, some contact, not so much head injuries, head contact, but a lot of bumping shoulders and elbows. Speed, hand-eye, it's got it all.
Yeah, I like that. I actually played hockey for the TCU Horned Frogs before the team disbanded. It was a short-lived thing, but yeah, hockey's another great sport.
You played ice hockey for TCU?
I did, yeah.
Fun fact.
Yeah,
first guy from Aledo to ever play ice hockey for TCU.
I'm sure that's right. I think that's probably right. Probably first and only, because it didn't last very long, but it wasn't, and there was no name, image, and likeness rights or anything like that back then. So
you had to go be a lawyer.
Yeah, I think that's actually going to be helpful. That's another side effect. People don't like this name, image, and likeness payments that the players are getting, but it's allowing the players to kind of get advocates similar to what NFL. You still can't have an agent officially.
That's so weird to me.
Yeah, but
you can get offered $6 million, but you don't have an agent.
Yeah.
Isn't Carson Beck getting offered $6 million to play for Miami?
I wouldn't surprise me at all.
Do they have collective bargaining power?
No collective bargaining power. They've lost, and there's been lawsuits where they tried to get that. Now this was before the name, image, and likeness things came out, so that
they should retry that.
There's a U.S. Supreme Court case actually that said don't have collective bargaining rights, and the NCAA is not a monopoly. So they've lost all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. The players have lost, I should say. NCAA was successful in that.
Do you think if they got collective bargaining power now, that would help with player safety?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that because the NFL Players Union is a great example of that. And again, I won't get political, but I'm a pretty conservative guy. But the NFL Players Union has implemented all kinds of protections for their players that have trickled down to the NCAA. But if the NCAA players could get collective bargaining, that would be a huge voice for their rights in player safety, rule changes, and that sort of, and equipment. So I think it would be very helpful for them to get that.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of arguments.
I think it would take an act of Congress though to do that because of that Supreme Court decision. I don't know that the name, image, and likeness change will be enough to change that rule, but yeah, there's pretty strong case law not allowing that.
And at least, are we getting too lawyery now? Is it still relevant to all the parents out there?
Collective bargaining, MDLs, yeah. But yeah, there's just a lot to think about with all that. It's been fascinating to work with guys. Met some really great guys who are suffering from the injuries, and I've seen improvements with treatment. So that's been good for us to see.
Well, I'm sure your help and you being there for those guys has helped a ton.
Yeah, it's been good for sure.
And obviously, it's your help. I mean, obviously not just your work, but your work is a big part of it. I mean, you've got the biggest group of guys. It's made changes across football in general. So, I tell this to good lawyers, like, you'll never know how many lives you saved or how many injuries you prevented by doing the work you do. But, Vinny, I can honestly say, like, by the work you and your team have done, you've not just helped your clients, but you've helped other players out there.
Thanks, man.
that you'll never meet.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's good to think about. Yeah, it's
a good legacy to leave.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. That's very, very kind. And if you're a parent thinking about football and, well, I had played football, would I have my kid play football? Same with being a lawyer. Would you have your kid be a lawyer one day? You're gonna
That's a separate episode. That's a separate episode.
Note. Should you send your kid into the law field? There's a lot of good work that you can do as a lawyer. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no doubt. Anything else? We tackle it?
I think we're good. I appreciate the time, and I'll look forward to watching all the other podcasts you got coming up on this. It's a fascinating fascinating topics and a lot of different
Yeah.
people that have come together.
Well, it's been fun. We've had
Yeah.
good guests like you. Annalise, you have anything else?
Yeah, question. So the second injury, it's more risky and more likely. Is that like the same game, the next play? Could it be the next week? Could it be-
The biggest risk, so the longer the time you can wait, the better. The biggest risk is like immediately afterwards. And so at first the rule was if you had a concussion, you had to stay out for that half. But then they were finding guys who were dropping dead in the second half with a minor hit. It's called second concussion syndrome, and it's been studied pretty in depth. That's why now, at least in high school, if there's a concussion, the player has to come out. They'll take his helmet from him. He has to come out of the game, and he can't go back in without a physician examining him after time helps, according to the studies. So yeah, it's definitely a kind of a time sensitive issue.
But it is a compounding thing too.
Yes,
Like,
it's
the more you
yep,
get.
exactly.
So yeah, if you couldn't hear, she didn't have a mic. She's gonna have a mic next time. Annalise from the back row asked how long does a player need to come out before that second concussion is a big problem, and yeah, it seems like the answer is as long as possible, at least for the rest of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely for the rest of the game, and that's oftentimes the biggest fight or temptation is get the guy back in too soon. Coaches, parents, everybody else, pull the guy out of the game. Don't let him go back in.
So if a kid goes to the sideline and then they clear him and they go back in and then he gets hurt bad, what's the liability situation?
Good question. I've not, if it's gross negligence by the coach, like if it's something that's not just negligence but gross negligence, should have known, did know or should have known and was reckless, the coach would be individually liable if it's gross negligence under the statute. I haven't seen a case testing under this new kind of protocol over, having to get the physician and all that stuff. I haven't seen a case that's tested sovereign immunity, which is public schools. You generally don't get to sue them unless the legislature puts forth in the law what you can sue them for. So I know that gross negligence you can sue them. I'm not sure. I haven't really seen it
Just
tested.
the coach though, not the school.
Just the coach, not the whoever the person was that cleared him. So even the trainer or whoever was on the sideline, the physician, that person, if they commit gross negligence and a player gets injured as a result of that, you can sue them individually.
Wow.
But that's, as far as I know, I think that's the test, but I haven't really studied or seen a good test case on that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You're gonna, if you ask one more question, you're gonna have to come sit on the set and have a microphone.
This is all related to that, but so this committee you talked about with the parents, I mean, surely there's, because of the bias, like, is there a protocol on who you can choose? And then is that person going to get sued if they're a parent? If I'm like, I'm going to help out the team, but then
Yeah, is
I'm
there a
not
risk?
sued
Is there a risk of getting sued if you
Yeah.
volunteer to be on these committees?
And
Yeah.
what are the protocols? Does this also apply for private schools? Because I worked for a private school, and I feel like maybe I was unaware, but I don't know that any of that was happening.
No, so the question is, can you get sued if you're helping out on the concussion committee that every public school has to have? And then second, do private schools have to have those? So the answer is, how they decide who goes on the committee has to meet the statutory requirements, but it's ultimately decided by the school superintendent. So it's on him, and he's got very broad immunity for him and his committee. So I haven't seen a test case on it since the law came out. I would think the answer is you could not be held personally liable for participating in the concussion protocol committee. As long as you follow the state laws, you're going to be immune, the same as a school would be immune. As far as private schools go, the law does not apply to private schools. They're regulated through a different, especially in Texas, very hands-off of the private schools. Mm-hmm. So TAPS, which is the Texas Association of Private Schools, that regulates most of the big private schools that are big enough to have a football team. And they've got a very strong concussion protocol. They try and model off the UIL. In fact, a lot of times they'll say we follow all UIL guidelines for player safety, for the rules, and for other things. I think there's a difference. I think six-man football has some carve out. It's pretty unusual. If you're in a town that has six-man football and you're watching this podcast, then I congratulate you. But it's pretty small. They've got a different set of rules. I'm not sure what all the parameters are, but it's the same basic kind of setup.
This podcast is a very far reach, Vinny.
Okay, I like that.
Well, thanks, buddy. Unless you have anything else,
No,
I'll let
Appreciate
you
it.
get back to work at your paying gig.
Yeah.
But thanks for coming on. Thanks for joining us for another episode, and we will see y'all next time.
Hey there, listeners. I hope today's episode has been enlightening and inspiring. As we dive into these important conversations about safety and community, I'm reminded of why I became a personal injury lawyer in the first place. Every day, I see people whose lives have been turned upside down because of some accident in one shape or form or another. It's a confusing, overwhelming time, and it can feel impossible to know where to turn. If you or someone you love have been in an accident and you need honest guidance, visit PattersonPersonalInjury.com to schedule a free consultation with our team. We'll get to know you, we'll get to know your story, we're going to answer your questions, and we're going to help you understand all of your options, all with no obligation and no pressure. At Patterson Law Group, we've helped thousands of people rebuild their lives and find closure with honesty, transparency, and integrity. You deserve an advocate who will fight for your rights and for your future. So don't wait. Visit PattersonPersonalInjury.com today, and let's start driving change in your own life.